Last half of the weekend sees the severe weather and the rain shift into Texas, but still pretty hot in South Texas and in the Northwest. We'll detail all those areas plus this weekend's weather coming up. Well, if we look through the period of Sunday through Thursday of next week, most of the bad weather sinks south into Texas and parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and it gets hot in the Northwest and in parts of the Southwest. We'll take a look at those areas in a little more detail as well. Much of the central U.S., northern U.S., Northeast looking not bad for next week. Let's take a look at the current visible satellite loop. Interesting features here. If you look very closely, you'll see there's a little swirl in the clouds right here. I'll show you what that is here in a minute. Other thunderstorms are, again, firing in Colorado, parts of New Mexico, to affect areas of western Kansas, the Panhandle regions of Oklahoma, and Texas as well. Take a look at the 500 millibar flow on top of that. This little disturbance right here is interesting. This is actually produced in part by a thunderstorm complex. It's a vorticity area or an area of spinning. That X right there, that's what those are, by the way, in case you're wondering. I don't talk about it very much. But you'll see these are in connections with where the jet stream dips quite often. It's a little overdone, probably too many X's, but like one here would have probably sufficed. But the idea is that this is where air is rotating. And so these thunderstorm complexes that develop sometimes in the morning and run overnight into the morning leave a trace behind. So this is actually moving through southeast Missouri, and it will have an impact on the weather out there. Meanwhile, a shortwave trough is what we call this in the central Rockies. High pressure down here is finally beginning to show up, although at this time of year, you know, in the summer, sometimes that ridge of high pressure extends all the way up to Canada, and we really start to get really hot conditions. So this is like a baby ridge. It hasn't quite established its summer pattern yet, and actually won't for a little bit here. This front that runs from New England through Pennsylvania, through the Ohio Valley, into Missouri, and back into Colorado is the primary weather maker. We have a reinforcing shot of cool air, a little backdoor cool front. All that means is that a cool front comes in from an easterly direction. So that's affecting the UP and parts of Minnesota. In fact, if we go up there and take a look at the station models, we have dew points up in upper Michigan, the UP, in the upper 30s with temperatures in the mid-60s. Duluth is 63 over 48. That's what we like to say. So the temperature is 63 and the dew point is 48. That's cool, relatively dry air. Winds are coming out of the south-southeast there. In Des Moines, delightful weather, 77 over 53, light winds out of the south. So that is the air mass of the winning air mass, I guess you could say, one of them at least for the country. Where is it hot? Well, it's hot down in Texas and in Phoenix, sitting at 101 degrees right now, Midland at 95, and Houston still getting in the act at 93. Notice that the dew points are in the 70s here and 60s here, and it's actually indicative of how moisture flows around our country. So this area almost completely relies on moisture coming in off the Gulf of Mexico and flowing up like this, and you can see these wind barbs support that idea. Meanwhile, out here, you don't typically get dew points very high. Their pattern, of course, kicks in later in the summer when the mini but significant monsoon kicks in the southwestern part of our country. Not as big as the one over the Indian Peninsula or the Indian Ocean, but it is one that you can actually see in the summertime in the desert Southwest. Got two radar loops for you here. This is that thunderstorm area that is forming again with that vorticity center that's moving right through here. So this is one area of concern, certainly for severe weather. There have been a couple hail reports out of some of these storms I noticed, and then there might still be a few that develop out in this region here. And we'll also take a look at the rain impact here in a minute. If we switch gears out to Colorado, you see supercells beginning to develop in extreme southeastern Colorado and northeastern parts of New Mexico. Around the Colorado Springs area, they seem to be waving goodbye to the storms, but they're traveling in and around the I-70 area. In fact, if we take a closer look at that part of the world, some of these storms have been severe thunderstorm warned already. Keep in mind with all of these products that this is recorded, what time is it? About 4:45 or so. So, take it with a grain of salt. Facebook is a perfect example of things that get posted days after they were significant. So I should put that disclaimer in here a lot more than I do. But this storm seems like it might be trouble, maybe even capable of producing a tornado later on if it can survive the next several hours. That area is smack dab right where the Storm Prediction Center has put the 3 out of 5 risk for severe weather from right around the Colorado Springs area right to almost Dodge. That's a level 3. Also, the area of extreme West Texas, Lubbock, right in the center of that, parts of New Mexico. A little bit of severe weather could occur up here in New England and just broadly here. So you already know that this part of the forecast is because of what I just showed you on radar. And then activity that might develop tonight, and it looks like it'll organize into another one of these mesoscale bands and cross the plain. So this part of the forecast is relying on that to happen later on tonight. And as far as tornado risk, there is still a 2% tornado risk out here, out ahead of that spinning motion aloft where the air is allowed to become unstable. You saw some of the thunderstorms already forming in that area. A couple more may form behind that. And broadly, we have this area of 5% tornado risk that runs right almost in the middle, kind of connects those two enhanced areas of severe thunderstorm threats. Remember, one was here and one was here. Well, 5% tornado risk. That means 5% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile circle. And I did want to jump ahead because I did show you on the first graph how that severe weather is sinking. This is the severe weather outlook for Monday, and it does encompass much of the deep south with a 15% chance of any severe weather on Monday. Every morning I publish a video called Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. Pretty simple. And I wait for the morning Storm Prediction Center outlook to come out. So it usually comes out every day somewhere between 8 and 8:30, maybe as late as 9, depending on the day. But if you want a more comprehensive look at all the severe thunderstorm outlooks, not just for the next 7 days, but really for the next 3 weeks, make sure you watch that on a daily basis. Late on this Friday afternoon, there is a mesoscale discussion for heavy rainfall here, flash flooding in this area here. This mesoscale convective vorticity center is what I was talking about. They make a note of it. It was back here when they issued this. It's moving this way now. And these red lines are unstable air. And then when you saw it, you already know there's a front there. So this whole area here is kind of primed for repeat motion on thunderstorms. Relatively slow motion, so the slower a thunderstorm is moving, just by default, the more rain it's going to dump, especially if it survives and keeps going. So just watch out for those areas that stretch over then Kentucky and start in southern Missouri. Here is the official quantitative precipitation forecast for the next 3 days. And they don't really talk a whole lot about this part of what they just said, but they do emphasize this area for sure. And all week, we've known that southern and eastern Oklahoma is going to get the brunt of this, with some of these areas here approaching 5 inches, maybe a little bit more of rain. If we take a look at the outlooks, the heavy rain hazard chances, so this is a slight, at least 15% chance in yellow, so it's very much in line with the two areas we just talked about for today, and that's where that mesoscale discussion for heavy rain was just issued, so that fits. And then on Saturday, it sinks into Arkansas, Tennessee, parts of northern Alabama, and Mississippi. And then on Sunday, that chance for heavy rain, again, slight risk, but right around the Red River Valley, North Texas and South Oklahoma. And then that graph I showed you at the very beginning, this on Tuesday becomes an issue, but only a marginal risk right now through the heart of Texas over into Louisiana, stopping over in Alabama, maybe getting as far east as Atlanta. Well, it is June, so we do expect to be seeing some hot weather. Now, we could easily be seeing it a lot hotter this time of year, but right now it's confined to just pockets. And again, that graph I showed you at the top of the video, I'm just going back to highlight some of those areas. So on Sunday, the GFS has high temperatures across almost all of Texas. So I'd say at least half Texas will be above 100 degrees, and the other half well into the 90s. So that is a very hot regime down there. And the other spot that's heating up on Monday is interior portions of Washington State, even getting close to the coast, though, some 90s showing up. And North California is in on that game, too, 108 degrees in Redding on Monday. If we just pick a city, and this would be Pasco in south central Washington, you can see their gradual increase in temperature peaking on Monday at 102 degrees, 101 degrees on Tuesday, and then they cool down rather nicely. And this is a long range forecast, so grain of salt out here, but it looks like it'll gradually warm up again out there by not this week, but the week after. Well, let's go to the tropics. Tropical forecast for Atlantic. Nothing going on the next 7 days that they're really watching with any kind of interest. Lots of Saharan dust coming across. The ocean temperatures in some of these areas, especially here, are actually a little bit below normal. So not really looking at anything. And just to remind you that the seasonal forecast for the Atlantic part of this anyway is for 13 to 19 named storms. This is the official forecast from NOAA. And number of hurricanes, 6 to 10. Major hurricanes, 3 to 5. Again, this does nothing to address if these hurricanes will hit land. It's not that type of forecast. It's just a numerical forecast. But they're saying it's a 60% chance of that basin being above normal. And they haven't had anything yet that would take the name off, but the first one would be Andrea, and then it would be Barry after that. And then we'll change our attention to the East Pacific. This often doesn't get a lot of attention for good reason, because a lot of times these storms form. By the way, these are two areas that they're watching, 70-80% chance of tropical development. But the reason I say that is because mostly they go out to open sea and don't affect a lot of people. Sometimes they do curve back into the Gulf of California, Baja, that area, and sometimes they get as far as Hawaii, but for this case, they're just watching it. So the next one would be Barbara, and Cosme would be the second one if both of those areas were indeed to develop into something significant. 3, 2, 1. General temperature trends. Saturday, still cool in the nation's midsection with the rain and the clouds and that cool high pressure. Meanwhile, you can already see the heat developing in the northwest. And again, the red colors means that's above normal. So what's interesting about this is even though you might have like a 90-degree temperature here, and that's in a red area, that's just because that's very much above normal for that particular place. Whereas you can have 91 down here in Louisiana, and it's only slightly above normal. So it's not really about the temperature sometimes, it's about what the departure from normal is. So that's Saturday. On Monday, again, the nation's midsection, cool. Wow. But there's some of that heat building into the northwest, 99 degrees, 100-degree temperature showing up on Monday. Texas cooling down at least through the Panhandle region, but the south part of the state is still pretty warm on Monday. And skipping ahead to Wednesday, they finally get a break. In fact, all this shade of green is below normal, whereas the northern plains are beginning to heat up, and you'll see that in the 6 to 10-day temperature forecast issued by the government, and a very high confidence level that it's going to be warmer than normal across the northern plains, slightly cool in Texas, and eventually cooler in the northwest after this little heat burst is gone. Precipitation-wise, it looks like the highest confidence in above normal precipitation is in the Gulf coastal regions, Texas, Louisiana, parts of Mississippi and Alabama, and maybe the northern plains might get in on that a little bit. And the last graph I'll show you is what's called the weeklies. So this is the European model, EPS. It's the ensemble. So they take the average of a bunch of different runs where they change the initial conditions just a little bit, and then they average it over a 7-day period. And that 7-day period is right here, June 9th through June 15th. And what it's showing, if it's colored orange like that, that means the anomaly is above what you expect this time of year. So that's a ridge of high pressure that's building there. So it's not surprising it's going to get warm here. And it's also not surprising that severe weather, if it's going to remain anywhere, would be out here where the jet stream is stronger, and maybe out here a little bit in that June 9th to June 15th period. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.